Good afternoon. That was better. So this was a weekend of coming together as a tune-up or an overhauling, as the notice said, and letting go of worn-out belief systems. And Joel certainly made it very clear what the issue was from the beginning, that we cannot be in conscious contact, being in this, as he said, out of being in the first chapter of Genesis, which is, as he said, the spiritual universe, that where there is no knowledge of, as he put it, good or evil, and as the Bible puts it, good and evil. We often wonder, well, where did it all begin? I know on the path, I'd be at classes and people would say something like, oh, I had this great unfoldment, or the unfoldment that came today, or Joel would say it on the tape, and right away my renegade would say, well, who folded it up anyway? You know, what is this unfolding? Why? How come it's folded up? And I love that part of the tape. He's so specific on where it started, was that wonderful saying, which I use a lot, and there's two other terms that other teachers have given me. And the biblical one in Genesis, when the consciousness entered, when mind entered, the second chapter of Genesis, is when God said to Adam, well, who told you you were naked? Who told you? And then Joel said, the knowledge of good and evil, that's what did it. That's what he said on there. I love the way he said that. Knowledge of good and evil, that's what did it. And that's who folded it up. But anyway, moving from that, it's that old, worn-out belief that you can do it wrong, that it's got to be this way or that way, and we are raised in a world of appearances. We've chosen, for whatever reason, to come into what I call the planet of mirrors. We've chosen to come here to see through the appearances of that illusionary world, which is only being projected out by, my world is projected out by me, and I make up those stories around it. And so from that, we go to, how can I tear this stuff up? And the other two sentences I like besides that, who told you? Who told you? And I used to say to people, even just people I'm working with, not necessarily in a spiritual venue, but be working, and I would say, well, who is it? They'd say, well, who told you that? Or I said, well, they. And I used to say, who is this they anyway? Who is this they? And Barbara Muhl's term, which was wonderful, was always, is that so? No matter what kind of, we're insisting on this or that or something else. And she would say, well, is that so? And then she gave us the wonderful tools of the script steps. Many of you have worked them. There's some here who haven't or don't know what I'm talking about. But again, it's going back to the second chapter of Genesis. The knowledge of good and evil is manifested in our script. We write the script of what good would be and what, quote, bad would be. That's the nature of error that Joel talks about. Seeing through the nature of error. And Byron Katie always used to say, is that true? Can you really, it could be saying, well, my mother said so-and-so, therefore I know she this or that. And well, is that true? Can you really, really know that that person did that or said that? Or are you projecting your little dialogue, your little script, your assumptions? And of course, we all know what assumptions lead us to, making an ass out of you and me. And assuming I know what you're feeling or thinking, assuming that I know what God, wanted me to do, to, quote, be a good person. So that is what we get down to the nitty-gritty with, is tearing up what we have decided is the knowledge of good and evil. And how do we do that? By investigation. Mother Teresa, she always it's Sister Teresa, the 13th century nun, not the modern one. I always get mother and sister mixed up there, but the 13th century nun, she was adamant about meditation and silence, and her whole thing was based on being still and listening. But her the second thing, and I was very surprised when I started reading about her, was the word investigation. And that's what we're told to do with all of our old belief systems, that all those things that we need to let unfold. We need to find out, what is it that I'm really believing? Now, how do I know that it's something within my old ideas, beliefs, need investigation? There's the word that we got right away. Well, what was that word? Do you remember? How do we know if something needs investigated? Reaction. Am I reacting? Now I no longer think that because I'm reacting, something is so, something is true, something is real. What that reaction tells me is I have to investigate something I'm believing about what is going on. Because what is, and if I'm reacting, I am not in acceptance of what is. I am somehow operating on old, and I love this word. I think this word is so gentle with us, and so uncondemning, and so uncrucifying, because so many of us love to get on our own cases, and that word is conditioning. It's as simple as that. How gentle to know that I'm operating, and that reaction is not because I'm a bad person, not because you're doing something, it's because I'm operating, I'm reacting to an old belief system, to the knowledge of good and evil. And when I get that reaction, I go, now what's the dialogue? What's going on here? What script, what story, what drama am I making up about? And Byron, Katie always would talk about, she would break it down with someone, said, well, my boyfriend left me. And she says, okay, let's back up here. All right, what's his name? And okay, his name is Frank. Okay, well, what's Frank doing? Well, he turned his back and he's walking out the door. And she would say, oh, okay, so if we drop the story, it's man walking out the door. And then we saw that there would be absolutely no reaction to the back of a man walking out the door. However, the story I told about him walking out the door because he thought this, he's this, or must be because I didn't, say it or do it or be, but that drama, it's instead of, oh, man walking out the door. Oh, probably because I'm bad. Is that so? Is that true? How can that be? Man walking out the door. It's as simple as that. Stopping, investigating, getting the sentence of what I'm saying and looking at it. And Barbara broke it down into recognition, realization, analyzing, or, quote, investigating. And that doesn't mean getting up in the head and going round and round and round and creating all this nonsense. What it means is I look at the belief. Well, could that really be true? And why am I operating out of that? If it's all God, how could that be true? And if I'm living in the spiritual universe of the Garden of Eden, then I cannot be judging by those old conditioning ideas, outworn. How come they're outworn? Because they don't work, because they feel bad, because they rob me of my union with God, because they rob me of my joy. If there's one thing that God, within, without, as us, is insisting on, is us being joyful, happy, joyous, and free. And if I'm not, I'm operating out of an old, worn-out system and script. The good news is I have awareness today. I can stop and pause, and within a few minutes, few hours, perhaps a few days, get that sucker out here and get that lie out here. And if I can't bust it myself, I put mine on paper so I can get it out here and look at it and cross things off and really see, well, who told you? Who told you, Dulcie? Who told you? That's God's word in the 2nd chapter of Genesis. Who told you you were naked? And then we can bust that illusion and we're back in the spiritual kingdom. That's what did it. I love that when he said that. Okay, there's some questions here. And the one thing I wanted to, I have this something, I guess it flew. Oh, there it is. I just love this because some people say, oh, well, I'll just meditate and it's all the Father within and it doesn't matter. And no, it doesn't. If I'm in harmony and those around me are in harmony, but if I'm not, Robert Browning has this saying, and I love it because of the work that we all do. Now, when the fight begins with himself, a man's worth something. Because now I'm awake. Now I'm starting to notice. Now I can really look at self and really go within. When the fight begins with himself, and I'm sure you've all been there in the middle of the night with it rolling around and the dialogue going and the battle is on and I'm wrestling some angel, some old thought system, some old belief about me or you or of God to the ground. And that's when we pull out all the tools we can, because I had a teacher that, Mary Hunt, because I know Ed knows her and several others here, used to say she would sit right down in the turmoil. Well, it didn't work for me. I would sit down in that turmoil and I would get worse, and I could not lift. And I had to do some other investigating to get to where it would lift in meditation. I usually had to get somebody else to hold a flashlight and show me my old ideas. So that's where writing comes in, or that's where calling each other comes in. And that's where naming it, claiming it, and dumping it comes in. If you can do it, fantastic. It takes me too long, and it's too arduous when I can have somebody else help me break that lie of I'm believing that whatever it is, health, wealth, supply, relationships, whatever it is, guilt, blame, vindication, anger, depression, any of that It's all those are all reactions to a belief structure. Okay. Any questions about any of that? Comments? Okay, I wanted to, the first question that came in, one of the first questions, was on intuition. Did Joel comment on intuition? And I hope whoever wrote this, because I think they wrote it before the tape today, heard him mention intuition several times. Did Joel comment on intuition? Yes, he did today in that tape, and probably just about every tape or book he's mentioned. And I think a lot of times just words have different meanings to people, and so I always go right to what the word meant when it was written. And I went to the dictionary because for me personally, my intuition is the same as my awareness, my awakenedness. I can't imagine not following it. And I think Joel's whole message of going within and the Master Jesus Christ always saying, my kingdom, the kingdom of God is within. That's where we go. That's where the answers are. That's where my direction is. That's where my guidance system is. And if the person meant instinct, as in the way animals have instinct, that might be a little bit different faculty coming from a human consciousness, animal, what is that, lizard brain? That's not right. It wasn't a lizard. What was it? Alligator? Reptilian. Alligator brain? Reptilian. Thank you. It's been a while since I did my psychology course. So I went to the dictionary and looked up the state of being, intuition, the state of being aware or of knowing something without having to discover or perceive it, or the ability to do this. Something known or believed instinctively without actual evidence for it. Well, what else is this path but that? What else am I doing moment by moment by moment, but intuitively allowing God to live this life? Like just silly little things, not to mention the huge things, but just silly. Today I went back down to where we were eating, and I went to the park, and Bud was walking pockets, and I thought I need to go use the restroom. I'm going to go in the restaurant, and Bud said, well, here's my card. Go up and use my room. And I paused, and it was like, no, go into the restaurant. So I went into the restaurant, and the waitress says, oh, your girlfriend left her credit card here. Now, you know, whatever, but the flow, if I'm in the quote zone, if I'm in the flow, I'm listening to where I'm supposed to go and do. It wasn't about the bathroom. You know, it was about that coming together in a more harmonious way. The Thoris was saying that it's perception, instinct, insight, sixth sense. And that's all Joel talks about, is us going by our sixth sense, getting out of the five physical senses, you know, not following because it looks good, here it sounds good, you know, and he gets back to, and of course I think that question was written before anyone picked up the one on feelings and reasons. And because it's very, very distinctive that, let me find it, it uses the word, Joel uses the word intuition right here. To receive the word of God or spiritual sense, we need to feel rather than reason. Isn't that what an intuitive is? Someone who is using a feeling faculty, their spiritual faculty, their soul faculty. Note here that the development of spiritual consciousness results in a greater gift of feeling. We understand that neither seeing, hearing, tasting, touching, or smelling will reveal spiritual truth. Here it is. Therefore, it must come through a different faculty. It must come through the intuitive faculty, which acts through feeling. Therefore, we have sat down to pray or to meditate and immediately get into the flow. So that's a wonderful handout about that question that just came through. I had an experience, the strongest one it's so hard that it was causing me to pass out because I wasn't listening. And I was over in Russia, and I was with Doris, and a group of us, Doris Crawford, for those of you who don't know, and we had we'd finished the 2 weeks together, and it was the day of our departure back to the United States. And after that, I realized that I was going on a film set in London following that within about a week, and it was like it made perfect sense for me to fly from Russia to London and spend some time looking around. I had never been there, and so I was trying to get on the phone to make arrangements because some people of the group had decided to go to London, and I was going to piggy bank, on get my ticket changed. And I thought, why should I fly all the way back to California and in 1 week get back on a plane, with the crew and go all the way back to London? It made no mental sense. And every time I would try to go to the phone, I would start to get nauseous, and because I was determined that made better sense and that was going to be a lot more fun than me flying all the way back. And every time I'd go to pick it up, I would finally, I got so insistent on doing it that way that I was literally, I would fall back down onto the bed in like a blackout. I just couldn't, and I thought, my God, what? And it was so strong. And finally, I went up to Doris's room, and I says, blah, blah, blah. And she says, you better listen. You're being taught something. You need to listen. I says, yeah, I know, but I don't want to. Anyway, I went back with the group back to the United States, and when I got here, found out my father had been put in the hospital with heart surgery. And they had no way of getting in touch with me. And I was alone. So those are the type of things that when I'm listening, I was where I needed to be, where Spirit felt I needed to be, when I thought I had a better plan or an agenda that made much more sense. So I don't want to live without that, and I don't want to go against it, because I've never since then gone against it like that. That had to be that strong for me to be obedient to it. So I hope that is on that question. Okay. Oh, yes, and it asked, did I remember Joel commenting, one of the sentences that I love is I remember Joel saying, let your intuition be your second language. So, yes. Okay. Would you please speak to this quote, business is a spiritual idea? No. I have always resisted anything of that nature. I don't know a damn thing about it. One time I owned a business, and I hated every minute of it. I don't know anything that really isn't really a spiritual idea for a spiritual student. I do not have experience, and I don't like to speak out of experience with the principles at all. But I know there are students here that are very, very successful business people, and I do recall hearing that sentence from a Joel tape, and I would much rather open it up for students who have business experience and know about this sentence. The sentence is, could you please speak about, quote, business is a spiritual idea. I don't know how it could not. I mean, how the world would run without, but I'm too much of a heretic for that. So anyway, Sherry, would you want to comment on that?
Sure. And spiritual idea, well, for me, with my business, I've had for 22 years or so, and then another business before that. I guess I don't really, I do think of it as my business, but I guess I feel more as though it's the universe expressing itself through me, and that I simply am the vehicle, and the business is the vehicle through which the universe expresses itself. So maybe that's what, as a spiritual idea, maybe that's my spiritual idea of my business, and so usually, because there's a falling away of clients, maybe every few years or something, I will traditionally just ask the universe. That's kind of how I put it. I just ask the universe for more business on an ongoing basis, and it always happens. It just always happens. It always has, and I have the feeling that it always will. So it's just it's a feeling in me that it's a service that the universe is expressing through me, and I guess that's maybe. Did the person who wrote that question have a more specific question, or just it was just general business as a spiritual idea, or?
Whoever was the question, there's acceptance.
Is that?
But you want to talk, you've had a very successful business for years.
For 60 years, but I haven't run it. It's been run from within. Mm-hmm. I've always gone within and asked for different things and didn't get them sometimes, but I always relied on the Father within. And it's been great to get out of your own way in your own business. Mm-hmm. Because when we get in our own way humanly, then it's short circuit. Just let the Father run your life completely.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I kind of feel a need to talk.
Yeah.
But I don't really have a successful business yet.
You're quite a successful businesswoman.
Right. In the advertising. I'm one of those people that lives in the mesmerizing, hypnotizing. I'm trying to hypnotize you all. I spend all my time hypnotizing during the day, and then I'm here trying to hypnotize about it. That's what I'm not knowing full well that what I'm doing is a lie. I work in advertising. I have to own things. And the whole thing is about what is the script? What is the script out there that we got to itch? If I want to sell tacos, then here I am an overeater. I couldn't have found a better thing than to try to tell people how to eat late at night. I'm like, don't come over here. Easy.
Taco Bell?
Yeah, not recently. I work at McDonald's now, but not at the other sit.
Barbie dolls.
Yeah, I've actually done quite a few different things. It's funny, it wasn't until this class that I realized that what I truly do, my forte as far as what I do is finding that itch that we need to tell them needs to be scratched. You're only a good mother if you buy a minivan that keeps your children safe, for example. You're only going to be a great parent if you take them to, studio, they see that father side. So anyway, but that's not what I meant to talk about. Sorry, I have recently, it was something I just wrote recently that kind of speaks to this, but I do, all the statements of find that thing that you love and it won't be work, and it's hard to find it, and the only way to find it is here. I've recently decided that I want to be a writer. I was 38 years old before, and someone else told me, you really write well, I don't know why you're not doing this. And I was like, and I'm in advertising, but my thing wasn't really a copywriter. I was the managing, and I fix things and write things, but everybody's like, why aren't you doing that job? And I'd go, me, huh? And I was constantly doing that. And then when I started to do it, I completely lost track of time. And I sat down and wrote a script one day, and it was like 8 hours, and I think I'd gone to the bathroom. And I'm talking about writing because that's where it is for me, but when you find that thing, and for some people it's accounting, it's numbers, for some people it's growing or whatever, but I woke up, I wrote a children's book a couple years back, and it's now been published, but I swear to you I took dictation. I did not write that book. I constantly tell people it has pros, and I really, really didn't. I woke up one morning, I saw this character, I rolled over and started writing. And I say that when I am writing anytime now, and like I said, for me it's turning out to be writing, didn't know that, but it is, because I'm certain of it now. But I definitely don't think I'm the one writing. And when I'm in that zone, and when I write stuff, when I sit down and I let go, I write all the stuff and I look back and go, wait. I'm constantly in shock that those words come out of my mouth, and they're usually pretty darn good, and I'm surprised. So it's that whole sense of when I'm connected to God. I just wrote that I have to do a blog, and I actually wrote that in the blog. I said my writing is best when I pray, meditate, and take vacation. And because of that, the fulfillment I feel is unbelievable. I may never get rich or make money off of it, but that's where I'm trying to go. That's my intention. So we'll see where I am in a couple of years. But I do believe that finally when people said find what you love, and as far as work goes, and it won't be work. You know, architecture, designing, it doesn't always have to be there. It's just so totally 100%, like all of those phrases I've heard all my life,
Finding your bliss.
Yeah. So.
Thank you, Kathy. Anyone else? Cynthia, you're a very successful businesswoman.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I kind of feel like a lot of the concepts that I've been shared is just tapping into that, to that other place. And I noticed, lately where I felt like it's more about me and not letting it flow through me. Of course, things don't flow as well, just not being centered and I see the difference, when I'm in that place and when I'm not. I definitely see the difference. Things just go effortless. And if I get in the way, like was sharing as people, it doesn't. And that is definitely the key. And sometimes it's hard to recognize, or it's hard to get out of that place when you're in the way and get yourself out of the way. But I think the years that I've had the most success is the years that I've done the least work and the more spiritual work. Go figure. And I just was like amazed. I mean, I think I don't know if it was Joel or Barbara, I think it was Joel who said, about, even if you locked yourself up in a room and you were or you were, removed from the world, that, if you had something that was your calling, that they'd come knocking at your door and that, visions would come to you. And that has been my experience where it was really effortless. And the more effort I put into it and the more strain, the more I seem to push it away. And it's really hard. I think it's a little challenging right now because the mesmerism of the hypnotism that's radiated right now about the economy, and I'm in the fashion industry, and all of the, the retail, drama that's gone on and stuff. It's hard not to buy into that. It's hard not to buy into that's going to affect what I'm doing or business and that kind of thing, because you just hear it from everybody around, at least for me, everybody around me, and the buyers that we work with, how bad things are, that kind of thing. So it's just staying out of that and not get drawn into that. Regardless, I'm sure that other fields experience that right now too. I think that's right now the biggest challenge is not buying into that. And that's not where my supply comes from.
Right.
So.
Thank you. Thanks, Cynthia. Yeah, I always really just worked I went to work at 11. When I was talking about doing the business, I meant having one, and I did have a salon once for a minute and a half, and I didn't like being that. But I've always been about my father's business. You know, that's the only business I knew. What is in front of me today to do? God's my employer, and I didn't worry about where the supply would come from. And I freelanced for 30 years and hired and fired. You know, I would have like 30 or 40 W-2s every year because I was, you know, on so many shows. Not fired in that way, but the project was done. And I never worried about the supply. I knew from a little girl that you went about doing what you intuitively or was led to do with love and give what you had to give. And rather than going to work to get, I went to work to give, and the supply followed. So that was the turned around principle. I think the most people that are most unhappy in the business world are those who are going there to make the money, you know, because then it strangles the heart and the soul. And many people can do it a long time, you know, before the airwaves get really twisted. But anyway, thank you so much for that question. You know, that's a good question. So, okay. All right. There's one more now. Could you talk a bit about the universal parent? Is the negative voice of the universal parent keeping my kid in feelings of inadequacy? Well, there wouldn't be anything else but. Nothing else. There's nothing else would possibly want to have you feel inadequate but the universal parent. And underneath anything that, quote, is beamed at us, there's one word to deal with, and that word is fear. I don't care if the experience of it is anger or depression, anxiety. It's underneath all of those things it lays the fear, F-E-A-R, forgetting everything's all right. Forgetting everything's all right. So I have asked a couple of seasoned students that have been working this work for a long time if they would just take, 4 or 5 minutes and share what it's like when they recognize that it's the world mind. Mary Baker Eddy didn't call it universal parent, called it, carnal mind, and there were all sorts of Christian Science type terminologies for it. The devil, all of those kinds of things. I used to love the Laugh-In show years ago, always the devil made me do it, and that was true. The mind was, and I can still see that guy in the yellow raincoat riding across on the bicycle and tipping over. I mean, it was a very clever show, and always they have that, here come the judge, and down would go this huge mallet, and, once again, I screwed up as a human being, and here come the judge. And that's that universal parent, always trying to tell me I am, what is the universal hypnotic terror script of every human being? I will never be good enough. You'll never be good enough. So we've been working a lot with that script and for years and years, and undoing, part of what we're here is knowing and unknowing. Unknowing the stuff that isn't true, and knowing somewhere, maybe not in my mind, but down in wherever that is, my soul knows something. And when not, undoing the things that don't work and doing. So, Anne, would you share a little bit about, this is a living message. And it's just not about taking it in and then going off and ignoring everything, in our outer and just, flying away on a cloud 9. This is about embodying in that spiritual body this message. It's a living message. How, when I am faced with it right there in the workplace, in my home, in my family, what do I do? Where do I get the principle? How do I drop in? How do I recognize, that's not God talking, that's universal mind. So, okay, Anne?
For me, it's never soft and gentle, and it's usually harsh and critical. And the suggestions they're always judgmental. It's the idea that the should word is the red flag, anger should. And it's not pushing me into judgment. If I can catch it and see that there's this suggestion that one possible outcome is wrong and the other one is right, and I need to choose the right path, and I can see there I go drop into duality. And sometimes that can be enough of a catch, because back to what you said earlier, if I can catch it, what is very powerful for me is just says who. Kind of like who's talking, but sometimes it just says who can really dissolve it hugely for me. Because I can just get stopped and it can get shut down when it says who. And, well, is that really true? So those words are very powerful catchphrases. I noticed that it's all related to, aside from the good and bad part, I see a real strong thread with the universal parent suggestions based on me doing something or not doing something that's going to make me look a certain way in your eyes. So there's a lot of connection for me with caring what people think of me, and that right back to the script. If they don't approve or like what I'm doing, if I don't please them, then it won't be okay. I've been taught to follow that down the line, so if it won't be okay, so what will happen? So I'll be whatever, thrown out, rejected, all of that. But it's not soft and gentle, and it's usually punitive and critical, and I'm getting better at catching it with says who, and spotting that, there's a suggestion that I should do this or I should do that to be okay. And with more work, when I watch myself care less what others think, not care, not give a shit at all. That's my aspiration for freedom. But to care less is progress, and so when I care less, then I'll watch how attached it is to trying to manipulate other people's opinion of me. So I know that's that little kid that wants to be, at the end, you're doing a job. This is a big, strong thread from my experience of being a good girl and doing the right thing. So, it's just spotting the dual nature of it is a choice, or it is a clue that really helps me. I'm thinking that one way is right and one way is wrong. Once I hear should up here, that's a really great flag. So it's all down to concepts too. My concepts are about how it should look, right? So says who was my biggest tool.
Thank you. Who told you?
Yeah. Who told you?
Christy, did you get my message on the phone?
I did.
Is that all right?
Sure.
Okay.
I was trying not to look at my phone, and then
Oh, good.
what time it was.
That is funny.
From you and Jesse, and I thought, okay, well, they're in the class, so
When something's up.
thought maybe I was going to miss something.
I just simply asked 3 people if they would share on this topic from experience.
Can you reread the specific question?
Sure.
What was that?
Yeah. Could you talk a bit about the universal parent? Is the negative voice of the universal parent keeping my kid in feelings of inadequacy? is it the universal parent that's keeping my kid in feelings of inadequacy?
Yeah, you know, for me it's kind of twofold, because there's that universal parent of what the world thinks I should and shouldn't be doing, and then the ones that really got me were the ones that my personal parents that I had firsthand experience with, you know, that family. My scripts were, I will always be abandoned by those I love, and I will always be betrayed by those I love and I trust. And, you know, those are all lies. And what I've come to realize, because it's not a belief, it's been, like you know, that word unfoldment, it's been gradually over a long period of time of working with whatever lie comes to mind. And some of them have just like gone really quickly, and then some of them, it's not that they're still there, but it's just it's out of habit, you know. It's like someone once shared an analogy with me. It's like a groove in a record, you know. It's like how deep it is that it just comes up. And now I guess my course of action seems to be no reaction, and just knowing that it has no power. That's what I just say in my mind. No power. Whatever it is, whether it's H1N1, whether it's the belief that you're not doing it good enough, that somebody thinks that you're not doing it right, it has absolutely no power. Because when I know who I really am, and I'm even trying to stay out of I, because when I know, then nothing has any power over me. Absolutely no power. And that's just what I do. Like no power. You know, nonsense. Absolute nonsense. No power, absolute nonsense. And it's one word. Now, of course, the body can still do what the body does, like glitch, reaction, you know, physical. The body still does that, but it's the knowing behind the mental dialogue that it has absolutely no power. And then I just continue to go, you know, on with what's going on. I'll give you a good example was, I normally go to the 11-step meeting on a regular basis. And for numerous reasons, I haven't been there, and I think it's been 6 or 7 weeks. And my husband called Thursday night and said, and he wasn't going to the meeting because he was working, and he said, and he's usually my biggest script reader, are you going? Are you going? And I was like, going where? He said, are you going to the meeting? And I said, I don't think so. And he said, well, you know, you probably should. We haven't been there, and da-da-da-da-da. And I said, is that so? And then that was like, you know, it was it. You know, but it's just, that's how subtle that it can just come in. But yeah, because of who it was and what it was too, because like Anne was sharing, it's like to look good or what they might think, you know, and not only can it be with what I've discovered is can it only be with like my scripts, but it's like what a spiritual being is supposed to be. What my spiritual practice is supposed to be. You know, what I should be doing to maintain this level of consciousness. That is the one that's the kicker. That is the, you know, it's like, because there are so many different ideas of what you're supposed to be doing, you know, and it's like I just try not to buy into any of it. The tools that we have been given, the script and the kids work, it restored me to sanity, really, you know, unbelievable. So, like, I could cry at the depth of what he did those.
Yeah.
Thank you. Amen. Thank you. And Sherry.
For me, when I hear the shoulds, the shouldn'ts, or there are two areas that the universal parents are strong for me. One is work ethic, and the second one is raising my own daughter. And those are two areas where I guess that it gets me deeper in the body. And a lot of times I can just breathe it away real quickly or just let it go. And immediately, recognition is the main thing for me is, not, if I can recognize it as quickly as I hear the word, the language should, or feel it in my body somewhere. I get particularly in my heart, I get a lot of aching when it has to do with my daughter, so it's like, okay, how quickly am I going to recognize that that's what's happening? And, but that's a technique that I have, is to breathe it, to just immediately, let the breath come in, let it clear, to recognize that I've immediately left out God. That is it for me. It's like, okay, I've left out God, and I know that. And I've dropped down into the world of cause and effect. And sometimes, if I feel that if I really can't sit and lift it on my own, then I'll call Dulcie most frequently, particularly if it has something real deep to do with my daughter that really hurts. But most times I can lift it by recognizing that I've left God out and I'm in fear, and that I need to go to the place where grace operates, because otherwise I am in the world of cause and effect, and that really scares me. Then I really get scared. And
Off with her head.
Exactly. Oh man. But that's particularly where it is with my daughter, and she does all kinds of stuff where, oh my God. I've left God out, and in cause and effect, and I need to immediately sit down and lift, because otherwise she's in the world of cause and effect, and so that's how I work with universal parents.
Thank you so much, Sherry. Thank you, all of you, for sharing. Very good. Does anyone have any questions before we go back into the garden of grace? Into the comments or questions? Okay. If there's any more, just write them down. I'll just end this part of the session before we go back into the silence. We'll go back into the first chapter of Genesis. I love this Emerson one. Do the thing you fear, and the death of the fear is certain. I love the wording of that. Do the thing you fear, and the death of the fear is certain. And then regarding decisions and intuition, Yogi Berra, if you come to a fork in the road, take it. That's about it. Like, here we are again. That's great. Yes, Maria.
That is, as you were talking about the fear, and when my son was shipped off to Iraq last year, and I just really into this fear.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, once before I had felt it, I just looked at my son and side of the rail. But facing that, it's like it's one thing to face your own mortality. There's another thing to face your triumphs.
Right.
And so that helped me a lot, just to go with it and
and just be silent and all that awareness you just face it, and if you lose this level of peace, it comes down, you know, and you just keep going back into that space, and that little peace comes in. And what I was so amazed at when my son had the experience where one of the missiles hit while he was sleeping, and he said the next thing you know, he was kissing the dirt, you know. And he said, you know, Mom, other than that, my whole experience over here was basically calm. He couldn't get over the calm. He was finding that peace. And he was kind of facing what that fear was. You know, he was feeling it. That was amazing.
Mm-hmm. Thank you all so much. All right. Let's put the seal on it. Go in and let all of these words and thoughts just kind of dissolve, knowing we're left with that wonderful gift of who said so, who told you you were anything other than the presence of God.